you guys stand up and let me know. If you guys stand up and let me know.
Okay. I don't plan on standing up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started now. Take a seat and quiet down so we can do the presentation. My name is Teresa Higgins, and I'm the 10th District Chairman. And I'm glad to see you here and welcome you to the Middleburg Barn for tonight's candidate forum. I want to welcome you here on this warm day in April. 3 inches of snow we got yesterday. I want to thank you all for coming out tonight and supporting our candidates. We have a great group of candidates, as you're going to see firsthand this evening. I especially want to thank Maureen Hanley of the Middleburg Barn, who is standing right over there. And she is responsible for everything. I also want to thank A to Z Music Factory, who's done all of the sound and lights and breaks and everything for us. And they've done a great job as well. I want to thank them for it. Without further ado from me, I want to go ahead and just remind you again of what a great group of candidates we have and the great opportunity we have in the 10th District this year. We're excited about it. We're looking forward to taking back the 10th for the Republican Party. And now it's my great honor to introduce to you the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia, Rich Anderson, who played a great big role in our great big victory.
Yes, he did.
Fellow Virginia Republicans, welcome. On behalf of the Republican Party of Virginia, I wish to welcome all of you here. In particular, I would like to speak on behalf of the state party and thank these 10 candidates arrayed up here for stepping forward and offering yourselves in public service to this great Commonwealth. I thank 10th Congressional District Chair Gary Higgins for hosting tonight's event. Julie Taylor, who I'll introduce in just a moment, for moderating. But most of all, thanks to all of you, the great citizens of the 10th Congressional District who are devoted body, mind, spirit, and soul to victory.
Yes.
So tonight we gather in one of a series of discussions of vital issues that are crucial in the life of our party, our communities, our Commonwealth, and our country. It's serious business because this is the stuff of democracy. It's as old as our Constitution, and it is as indispensable as our republic. And if done correctly, these candidates and our party will emerge stronger for the discussion. Nelson Mandela, who was the first president of South Africa, captured it like this. He said, "A good leader can engage in a debate frankly and thoroughly, knowing that at the end, he and the other side must be closer and thus emerge stronger." And so this is a discussion among fellow Republicans tonight. And it's that latter element that Mandela spoke of, unity of party and purpose alike, that are so crucial to the outcome of this process. It was indispensable in 2021 with our statewide and House of Delegates victories. It will be indispensable this year, party unity, and it will be indispensable, the indispensable element that will convey us to victories on November the 8th. And so with that, let us begin. It's my privilege to introduce to you our moderator for tonight, Julie Carey, who is the NBC4 Northern Virginia Bureau Chief. All of you have seen her. All of you have attended events that she has moderated. Her byline, I think, is one who's been in forums as our candidate for the House of Delegates, is fairness and professionalism. But she's been covering Northern Virginia now for 3 decades. She's been a frequent moderator at these sorts of events. And so I ask you to welcome our moderator for tonight, Julie Carey.
Well, good evening and welcome everybody. I just checked in with Doug Kammerer, our meteorologist, a while ago, and he assures me you will not have to drive home with snow tonight. Although it looks like you might have a tailwind. But warmer weather is on the way, so I want to lead with the good news. It's my great pleasure to help out with this forum tonight. And before we get started, speaking to the candidates, a few words about the format. We're going to begin with opening statements from each of the candidates. They'll have 90 seconds to reply to that. But as you can see, I just told them, this is a new record for me. 10 candidates is a lot. So in the interest of time and to get to as many topics as possible, the candidates will have just 1 minute to respond to the questions. Candidates, I want to direct your attention to the 2 timers in the front row. They are 2 very important people tonight. The candidates will get a 30-second warning, a 15-second warning, and then a red hard stop. And they know that's the time to stop talking. And I know they're all going to watch us on that. But as you see, 10 of the 11 Republican candidates on the ballot are here with us tonight. Janine Lawson sends her regrets. She is unable to attend, but as an elected supervisor, she had to be at a Prince William County Board meeting late this evening. But like all the other candidates, there are surrogates in the room for her, and you can certainly meet with them afterwards this evening. The other thing I want to say about this format, these questions were developed by the 10th District Republican Committee in consultation with the RPV. The candidates have gotten an advance look at these questions. This is a forum, it's not a debate, so that's a little bit different, and so don't expect any gotchas tonight. They should be well prepared to handle these questions. And again, in the interest of time, this is my ask of you, audience. I beg you, I implore you to hold your applause until the end of the night so that we can let these candidates address as many issues as possible. And I promise I will give you a chance at the end of the evening to clap your hearts out for all of them. So with no further delay, we're going to turn to opening statements. I'm going to turn the podium. I apologize for turning it back to you, but that's the arrangement we have right now. And with opening statements, we will begin with John Beatty.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm John Beatty. I'm running for all of us. I'm a husband, father, teacher, school administrator, computer programmer, and I'm on the Loudoun County School Board, which you may have heard about. And I've stared down big tech at my job as a mobile developer at a number of startups. I worked at a company called Tax Magic. And even though our main competitor was Uber and we were working in the ride-sharing space, we still had to make sure that Apple was happy with what we did. Because at any time, a nameless, faceless reviewer could come in, kick our app out of the App Store, and stop our business from thriving. Big tech has so much control over our day-to-day lives, and we need someone in Congress who understands it. No one in Congress understands it like I do, because my first job out of college didn't exist when I was graduating from high school. We need a program in Congress who speaks the language of big tech and understands it, so that we can protect our lives and protect our freedoms. And running for the school board and winning in 2019, when so many other candidates didn't, I have the best perspective on how to fix education. I've seen that we may have local control, but really it's national organizations dictating what happens at the local level, and that's through critical race theory and the guise of equity. I've stood my ground with parents. I fought for the school reopening. I've made sure that I was the only vote in support of Governor Young's mask mandate. And I stood my ground. I proved my mettle on the nationally known school board. I'm running to take the fight to the national level so that we can make politics local again. Thank you.
Dave Beckwith, your opening statement.
Good evening. Thanks for being here. It's great to be back in the Middleburg Forum. Last time I was here, my son was getting married last summer, so it's great to be back. My name is Dave Beckwith. I'm a 30-year Air Force veteran. I spent a year in industry after retiring after 30 years, and then I made a second career going back to the National Reconnaissance Office as a senior intelligence official, working on developing the architecture, design, and testing of our space intelligence satellites. And they are the eyes and ears in space, is what we call them. I'm also a homeschool dad, work with our community and involved in my church. But I also am a cancer survivor, and I've battled cancer twice, and it taught me two lessons. First, that life is precious, it's a gift from God, and we should live that way. And second, that I want to be doing something. Our time on this earth is finite. So I really want to be doing something that I'm passionate about and that's important. So that's what led me to decide to run for Congress, looking at what the Biden administration had done to our country. And there are three things I'm focused on this campaign: a strong economy, rebuilding our defense, and a freedom agenda. And that freedom agenda is really getting the federal government out of our lives and pushing back responsibility and control over our lives to the states and to each of the individuals.
Compound.
Hey, good evening, Patriots. My name's Tom Cal, not exactly Charlie Dream Giant, so I want to make sure you guys can see me in the back there. But I came here as a refugee from Vietnam, and this country gave us everything. And so I paid it back with 30 years of service in the United States Navy, 25 in special operations. We're going to talk about three things tonight: the economy and how we need to balance this budget, which I've done for the Navy for 2 years; the national defense, which begins with securing our border; and defending our Constitution, which I've done for 30 years. Okay? What does that spell? Economy, national defense, and defending our Constitution. The end. It spells the end for Nancy Pelosi and her reign of terror. It spells the end of the woke left liberal agenda, and it spells the end of government telling us what to do. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot of people here say they'll fight for you, but how many people will put their life on the line for you? I've done that, and I'll do it again, because I'll be darned if you have to wake up one day and not have a flag to stand under or a country to call your own, because that happened to me, and that'll never, ever happen to you. Thank you so much.
Mike Clancy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Mike Clancy. No doubt we are living in difficult, challenging times. Raging border crisis, record gas prices, and the list goes on and on. And more fundamentally, our constitutional rights, our family values, our schools, our college campuses, our military are under relentless attack by the cancel culture and the divisive equity agenda. And we need to fight back. Everybody in this room, we need to join together, fight back, and be bold, be courageous, and that's the reason I'm running for Congress. I'll be your voice in the United States Congress. I will lead the charge. I'll fight for us. I'll fight for our families. I'll fight for our parents. I'll fight for common sense, fiscally responsible government, and against reckless spending and reckless monetary policy. I'll fight for individual liberty and constitutional rights. I'll fight for national security and energy independence and border security. We must win in November, and we will win in November. So tonight, I ask for the honor of your vote. And I know it's a complicated ranked choice voting system, but I have a simple solution. Remember these three words: we like Mike. I'm Mike Clancy, and I appreciate your vote. I look forward to the discussion tonight. Thank you.
Teresa Ellis.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming, and thank you to the organizers for doing such a great job to bring us all together. It's a difficult task, we're all busy people. My name is Teresa Ellis, and I am running for U.S. Congress in Virginia's 10th District. I am an elected city councilwoman. I'm serving my first year term, finishing up this year, and I'm running for Congress. I'm also a self-made businesswoman. I have built my own business in the 10th District in the last 30 years with a background in finance and healthcare management. My husband, George, back there with the Ellis sign, and we have raised one son and 6 daughters in this 10th District. I'm very proud of our accomplishments. I've done a lot in our community as a volunteer leader. I'm chairwoman of the Red Cross, as well as area governor, past area governor of Rotary. I've done a lot with master gardeners and even the Beekeepers Association. I've served during the pandemic. I have seen firsthand the government overreach and the infringement on our freedoms and our liberties. I will never let that happen again when I'm your congresswoman. I went door to door to help businesses, to keep them open. I went to families to help them with their education. Shutting down our schools was the worst thing that could ever happen to our families.
have great candidates up here. Every one of us have great experience. What differentiates me from other candidates? I have 5 years of legislative experience. I spent 28 years in the United States Air Force. I spent my last 2 years in legislative affairs, where I worked with the Trump administration and Congress, both the Senate and the House. I drafted the legislative proposal that created the United States Space Force, which was the sixth branch of the U.S. Armed Forces. And as a career space guy, myself, that was probably the pinnacle of my career, especially starting out as enlisted, and then earning an ROTC scholarship, and then retiring as a colonel. And then in 2019, when we did retire, we started a small farm in Knoxville, Virginia. I became a vice president of a national defense firm in Washington, D.C., still involved in national security consulting and building national security capabilities. 3 things that I'm focused on is strength, unity, and purpose. From strength, strong families build strong communities. Strong communities build strong nations. Unity, it's still we, the people, who determine America's fate. And purpose, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Henley. If I'm not your first choice, make me your second. If I'm not your second, make me your third. God bless you.
Good evening, everyone. Can we hear me? As we sit here tonight, our leaders in Washington are failing us yet again. The inflation rate is at a 40-year high. The inflation rate is at a 40-year high. The national debt is at $30 trillion. The border remains unsecured. And when I go around and I talk to everyday families in this district, they're still worried about the gas prices. They're worried about the grocery bills going up. And most importantly, they're worried about the ever-increasing energy bill at the end of the month. We've watched as foreign dictators and leaders around the world have become aggressive, increasingly aggressive against interests, and have affected the peace. And we have to stand up and fight back. Look, I was born here. I started a business here. I have a farm here. I bought a house right down the street from my parents. The American dream. But I fundamentally believe that American dream is coming under attack, which is why I decided to step up and run. People often say, "Hey, Caleb, you're awfully young for this job." And it's true, I am young. But I like to remember people that in the beginning of this country, it was young Americans that led the way. Washington was 21, James Monroe was also 21, Thomas Jefferson was 30. Young Virginians led in the beginning, and as we face generational issues again in this country, it's time that young Virginians stuck to the Constitution, restore our rights and the American dream, and bring us into the next century. And that's why I plan to do if you elect me on May 21st as your candidate for Congress. Thank you very much.
My name is Jeff Mayhew, and I'm running because my dad taught me never to step over a mess, and Congress is a mess. I look around at the world and I worry what we should never see. I worry what their future has in store. I worry about the lack of leadership Congress has provided during my lifetime. It's probably the worst stretch in our history. So much deflection and anger, so little leadership and honesty. I'm not a politician. I don't have any experience. But I am an American, and I love this republic. I've worked hard to understand the problems our country faces, and I have some fresh ideas I believe can help. 1. In the 1920s, Congress stopped expanding as the population grew, and as our representation stayed the same, the people's voice was drowned out. If we want our voice back, we must expand the House. 2. In 2010, the Supreme Court ruling of Citizens United allowed corporations to funnel unlimited amounts of money into politicians' fundraising accounts. Who do you think they're going to listen to? The people or the people who pay them? This ruling caused the people to lose our power. If we want our power back, we must repeal Citizens United. We need to make sure our children and grandchildren don't have to face these same problems. We need congressional term limits. Now, I'm just a regular guy who thinks deeply and loves his family. I'd rather be building one of my business ideas or helping my community.
Brandon Michon, you're next.
My name is Brandon Michon. I'm a native of Loudoun County. I grew up here. I'm a product of the public school system. I'm married to... Is it on?
It's okay. Yeah, okay.
My name is...
I'll see.
Here we go.
My name is Brandon Michon.
I'm a native of Loudoun
County, and I'm a product of our public school systems. I am the dad who spoke up to the Loudoun County School Board. I'm the individual who spoke up when it weren't. If you look at the day it's here, it's all about leadership. We have an opportunity to elect strong leaders. We have an opportunity to represent the people of this district. We have an opportunity to...
Brandon, let's can you share a microphone with one of your, let's.
I can just talk loud if that's okay. Well, let's just do that real quick. I'll just talk loud on this one and we'll get the mic taken care of. So I'm going to start on all right,
Here we go. Can you hear me now? Did we figure it out yet? You guys know that saying? Figure it out. All right. My name is Brandon Michon. I'm a native of Loudoun County. I grew up here. I'm a product of the public school systems, and I married my high school sweetheart. I was blessed with the ability to throw a baseball, which took me on a Division I scholarship out west. From there, I moved to New York City, where I worked in investment banking. And I worked at the highest level of finance, working on some of the most complicated transactions. Had the opportunity to come back to Virginia, bought a house across the street from my parents. So bless my wife. So we got involved immediately on education. I have 4 young children under 10 years old. We spoke up, and on one day in January, I told the Loudoun County School Board to figure it out, which was telling them that we need strong leaders. We need people to represent the voice of the people. Throughout the rest of the year, I had the opportunity of campaigning with Governor Youngkin on education. And at the beginning of the year, they came to me, and his team came to me, and encouraged me to jump in this race. And I told them that we would do that under the representation of you guys. And we are running on 3 things: education, safety, the economy. We need people who are going to stand up for the education of our kids, which we have done. We need people who are going to stand up for our law enforcement, which we have done. And we need people who understand the complexities of our economy and understand how to fix the issues. We have the momentum, the moxie, the media. And guess what? My name is Brandon, so we have some really good marketing.
Brooke Taylor.
Hi everyone, I'm Brooke Taylor. It's an honor to be here with you. Thank you for this forum. I am an educator, a nuclear security expert, and I have managed appropriation portfolios for the United States Congress. I'm a mom that's concerned about the well-being and future of my child's education. I'm qualified to be our Democratic opponent this November, not based on the pipeline of pedigree, popularity, or as a textbook politician. I am a candidate with foreign policy experience that has served in both the executive and legislative branches of our federal government. Virginia 10 is a majority maker seat for the House Republicans this November. As our job as Republicans is to find the candidate that will beat Jennifer Wexton this November. With no disrespect or offense to my male colleagues, a woman will beat Jennifer Wexton this November. When we look at the fact of where we're going, what this means to us as a race, I ask for your vote on May the 21st. There are policies right now in place that are keeping our families safe that I worked on firsthand. When I say I'm ready to go to work on day 1, I'm here to apply for a job to work for you, and your taxpayer dollars will not provide on-the-job training for me.
Mr. Beckman, you'll answer our first question first, and as I told you earlier, candidates go on down the line, and we'll finish up John Day. We'll answer that question last. Mr. Beckman, looking just at the 10th Congressional District now, what do you believe is the single most pressing issue that is specific to this district that you'd like to work on?
I know it's inflation. Inflation is the #1 issue for our district, for our state, and for our country. Inflation is an existential threat to our way of life, and to our economy, to our ability to defend our nation, and also to our freedoms. If inflation isn't taken under control, as we've seen in history, it can lead to a loss of freedom as well. So we must get inflation under control. There are 3 things that we need to do immediately when we get to Congress. When I get to Congress, the first is we need to end the uncertainty for business. The regulations, the lack of tax policy is making our businesses and our entrepreneurs sit on the sidelines. So we need to lock those in, the Trump tax cuts. And then we also need to stop the spending. That's just fueling the rise of inflation across our country and our state. And finally, we need to put American energy and flood our economy with American energy.
All right. This is what economy. Look, what's the largest employer in the 10th district? It's the government contractors. All right. And so, with 16 years of continued resolutions, we can't innovate. Companies are hurting because they can't go on pinky promises from the government. All right, we have to balance that budget. I wrote and balanced the Navy's $140 billion budget. I know how to do this. And we need to do it in order to innovate, to get things like hypersonic weapons and artificial intelligence with machine learning. Those are the things we need in order to beat China and Russia in this next fight. And I'm telling you right now that all this is trickled down to your pockets and will cause the economy to collapse if we don't pass a budget that's balanced and for government to stay within their means.
So as I travel the district and I talk to families and I talk to contractors and construction workers and I talk to retirees on fixed incomes, it's the economy, it's gas prices, and people are struggling. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to control reckless spending. We need to have fiscal discipline. The other issue, though, that comes up a lot is the equity agenda. Parents object to what's being taught in the schools, and they want that change. They want core academic education. They want math and science. They missed 2 years of school, and they want that made up now and have education refocused. So those are the two basic things that I hear about almost every single day. The economy, the gas prices, and setting us and negating this equity agenda.
So I grew up in a shop. My mom and dad lived paycheck to paycheck. They built an auto repair shop. So we all pitched in with them and we helped them to grow their business. So I have had the business owner blood for a long time. As I have toured this district, from Rappahannock up to the top of Loudoun, business owners that I have visited with and people that also work in businesses have screamed that they need help. One of the biggest issues in our country is getting people back to work. Helping employers to also have the ability to retain people that they employ. We have to really think big and hard on how we're going to do that. We got to focus on workforce development and also give incentives to our employers to give them a path to give to their employees to be able to grow as well.
Yeah, as I went across the district, saying Rappahannock all over, education was the thing, but economy was the largest concern. We're in one of the richest counties in the United States of America, and yet we have low and middle income families who are struggling because of inflation. Part of that inflation was caused by a partisan bill called the American Rescue Act that pumped $1.9 trillion into our economy last year. Our economy was already growing at 6.5%. There was no reason to have that. It didn't rescue anybody. So when we get to Congress, we need to stop the spending. We need to end the COVID policies that incentivize people to stay home. And we also need to do a work reform with welfare recipients so that they're out contributing to the labor force, so it helps alleviate some of the labor shortage that we have out there right now.
So of course we just had tax day Friday. 90% of Americans paid more money in taxes this year than they did last year. We've seen an amazing, increase in inflation. I run a landscape company, and if I had started the year off by giving all my employees a 10% pay cut, well, they'd be looking for a new employer, and I wouldn't blame them. This is what the Democrats have done. They've increased our tax burden. They've increased our invisible tax inflation. They've increased our gas prices. If we don't get these under control quickly, you're going to see a lot of families come under a lot of hurt, a lot of businesses come under a lot of hurt, and it's not going to be easy solutions, but we have to, when we get to Washington in the fall, go straight to work and deliver quickly, and I think part of that starts with reforming our tax code, make it easier for business to do it. My business, it takes me 3 weeks every year to do my taxes. It's ridiculous. We've got to make it so folks can pay their taxes quickly and keep doing what they do best, which is being entrepreneurs in America.
When I speak with people in the community, they feel like they don't have a voice. And that's because the districts have grown larger and larger over the last 100+ years. When Madison wrote Section 1, Article 2 of the Constitution, the intent was to continue to expand. He understood that a smaller group meant that the individual could be heard. And the reason that you feel like you can't be heard is because there's too many of you. Your congressperson, your representative, they can't hear you. So the first thing that I would do when I get to Congress would be to fight to expand the House, as it should be, as it was written in the Constitution.
No matter what economic bracket you are in, nobody wants to pay more for goods and services. We live in a time where our economy is not just local to the United States or Virginia or Northern Virginia, it is a global economy. We need people who understand the complexities and intricacies of that economy. We are not in an overheated economy. We are talking about raising rates 4, 5, 6 more times this year, which will eventually have a direct impact on your home prices here in Loudoun County. We are in an underperforming economy because of failed policies. We must fix the labor participation rate issues. The 18 to 26-year-olds are not incentivized to work anymore. Your Chipotle burrito has gone from $8 to $12 because of supply chain disruptions, cost of fuel, lack of labor participation, and the inability of this administration to lead. We need strong leaders. We need people who understand how to get things done in a very complex world, in a very complex economy, and have the ability to execute on that today.
As we look and listen just at the challenges that are facing our country and our world, and what is required in Congress at this time, in discussion about the ideas is how to solve the problem and how to fix the policy. I have firsthand experience working and pushing legislation through and with Congress. When it looks at the profile of the leader, I am unwavering, unapologetic, and convicted for the conservative values and principles that I know and believe are right. When you look at just my strength when it comes to the integrity of a leader, of a person, to be in some of the most intimidating roundtables, talking about policy of existential importance, when we look at these other issues and these other policies and programs of how they intersect, how they touch each other in our homes, I've got our back.
Thank you. I look at this question as something that's specific to the district. And I think that one thing that I've seen in my experience in public office is we need more internet access. And it's not just rural internet access. One of the amazing things about the pandemic was that kids in Sterling, which is a very urban area, still needed hotspots delivered to their houses in order for them to take part in remote learning. So this affects urban areas, it affects suburban areas, it affects rural areas. And I think in Congress we can fix this by lowering telecom regulation. We can open up more spectrum, and we can do it in a way where it actually works rather than this current 5G debacle. But this is going to open up educational opportunities. This is going to provide people an opportunity to work from home, so that we'll take cars off the roads. Even if you've got Fios and you've got gigabit, this is going to help you in your neighborhoods and your commutes. Because now there's less people on Route 7, Route 66, 95. And this is even going to help our housing because now people have more options where they can live. It's not even the crowded urban and suburban areas. They can go out to the rural areas and have a better spot, better cost of living, and better living standards for their families.
Our next question begins with you. What is the very first bill you would like to introduce if elected, and why?
Okay, so Congress is kind of like going to high school again, right? You, as a freshman, you're going to get stuffed in the locker and then told to sit down and color. But unless you're part of the varsity team, I'm part of the varsity team of SEAL Pack. I've got 30 combat warriors that I serve alongside with. We're going in as 15% of the vote. And so we're able to go in there, and I want to push bills. In fact, I'm already pushing bills right now in Congress as a ghostwriter for a couple of these bills. But the first thing is to keep the senior officers, flag and general officers, from seeking appointed or any kind of higher level office after they retire. This will keep them from choosing politics over the military, so they won't be so woke. And this will lay my groundwork for my capstone bill, which is for term limits. We've got to have term limits, and it's got to start now.
So under our Constitution, it's Congress that makes the laws, and the President executes the laws. However, Biden, in just over 1 year, has issued over 87 executive orders. By comparison, our first 5 presidents issued 15 in 34 years. So when I get to Congress, my first legislation is going to be to rescind the executive orders that created the border crisis, to rescind the executive orders that are stifling domestic energy, and to rescind the executive orders that are promoting the equity agenda in our country, in our schools, in our college campuses, in the military, and in the workplace.
So the first bill that I would introduce, I paid my way through college. I graduated from George Mason University, and I was Mason Alumni of the Year. I was awarded through the Business Communication Department in 2019 because of my work that I have done mentoring students and connecting them to careers. I still stay very connected to our young professionals in our college, and I stay very connected to our students. I want to pass a bill to stop human trafficking. Human trafficking is a nationwide public health issue. We have young people that are being preyed upon on the internet. We need to make more internet safety for our children, and we need to put harsh penalties on the people that do this to our children. That will be my first initiative. It's real, it's happening. Thank you.
You know, I thought about this question a lot because there's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. But first and foremost, I think we need a Parents' Bill of Rights that restores power back to the parents, not just in Loudoun County and Prince William, but across the country. It's time to put parents in the front and bureaucrats in the back. It's time to make sure that money goes and follows the kid, not the bureaucrat in their retirement. That includes parental right to know what's being proposed for curriculum, what the budget is, who the guest speakers are, what is their bio, where are they coming from, and most importantly, to make sure that parents will no longer be censored, surveilled, or targeted by a federal government when they have no right to do so and they trample on our First Amendment rights. So the federal parental bill of rights is the first one I would submit to Congress.
So this might not get huge headlines, but I believe that we must balance the budget. And so as a commitment to everybody in this room, every year I will submit a balanced budget amendment in my first week in office, every session of Congress, the first time I get in. In addition, submit a proposal for the budget, an actual solution, and show how we can balance it. I want all the members of Congress, Republican and Democrat, to go on record every year why they wouldn't vote for a balanced budget. And then secondly, and I know the Republican Congress is going to do this, we have to investigate Hunter Biden from Congress and what has been done as far as the overreach and the influence and the money peddling and what China has done. If we don't investigate that on day one, then we failed as Republican Congress.
So the first bill that I would propose would be to overturn Citizens United. We have to get campaign finance under control. The quality of candidates since Citizens United has taken place has gotten worse year after year. I think you guys can see that. Who do you think they're going to listen to? The small business owner who lives in the district who makes under $100,000 a year, or a corporation who's based out of state who funnels over $100,000 a year into their political PAC? I think the answer is pretty easy. According to VCAP, Jennifer Wexton's top donor is the Virginia Senate Democratic Caucus. She's received over $350,000 from them. If you follow the money, you'll see that most of that comes from corporations and special interests. We need to repeal Citizens United. They don't have our district's interests at heart. Repealing Citizens United gives the power back to us who live here. We need to make sure that they take money from only the people that live in the district. Thank you.
First, I would vote against Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House. Second, I I would vote for Dr. Virginia Fox as chair of the Education Committee. She is a friend, she's endorsed us, and she has been a champion of education. And last, I would introduce a bill and an investigation into the DOJ, the special interest groups, and the career bureaucrats who came up and called all of the parents here tonight domestic terrorists. We need answers for those who are fighting against our children, the parents, and their education. The special interest groups need to be held accountable for back channeling when we as parents are just looking out for the best interests of our children.
Thank you for this question. Before the pandemic, women were becoming more and more so the primary breadwinner for their household. After the pandemic, working moms are having a hard time entering back into the workforce. This is having a negative effect on many families' finances and just home life. As a solution to this, I would like to see legislation introduced that encourages a national paid family leave plan, legal protection against pregnancy discrimination, and the opportunity for high-quality, affordable child care and early education development to help working moms get back into the workforce.
I'm going to introduce the Protecting Freedom of Expression and Innovation on the Internet. What we're going to do is protect Internet providers from liability from information that other people put on their websites. And you know, if you're having a conversation online, and someone puts something that's truly awful on your website, you're not responsible for that. And what we're really trying to do is we're going to enshrine free speech on the internet. That's so crucial. We see right now how our free speech is getting limited, and we need to actually put that in the law to protect people. Free speech has made the internet such a powerful tool. It's allowed people to fight for things that are unpopular from the establishment, and allows for real uprisings to come and to change how our legislation is made, what people do. And I think that's why something to protect freedom of expression on the internet is going to be one of my first priorities.
So I had prepared an answer where I was going to talk about the 10th Amendment. And I think that's an important part of my campaign. It's pushing responsibility down to the states. We don't need more bills in Congress, we need fewer of them. And we break a bunch of laws every day that we don't even know about. But I got news from my campaign staff person, one of my volunteers, that just enraged me. And so I'm going to add that my first bill would be the Medical Freedom Act. This individual works for a local hospital. She's vaccinated, but she had a situation with vaccination where she doesn't want to get the booster. That's not good enough for her employer. She's been given notice that she's going to be fired. I want to make sure no bureaucrat, no judge, no politician ever tells somebody your job is at risk if you do not do what we tell you to. And so that is my pledge of what I plan to do with my first bill.
Let's dig a little bit deeper on education. We'll start this question with Mike Clancy. As you know, the issue of parental involvement in the schools has been a topic of concern. And most school policy, though, as it relates to curriculum and instruction, that's devised at the state and local level. But if elected, what role would you play and what federal legislation would you support to enable greater parent engagement?
Thanks, Julie. Yes, the school issues are local issues, state and local issues, and our governor and our attorney general are doing outstanding work on those issues. And Republicans need to take control of school boards in the next election cycle. At the federal level, there are several things I'm focused on. First, there is a pending Parents' Bill of Rights Act right now in Congress, and there are over 100 Republican co-sponsors, but not one single Democrat. I will co-sponsor that bill, I will vote for that bill, and we'll put it on Joe Biden's desk. Second, I will fight for legislation to provide a tax credit to fund school choice for parents, and that includes homeschooling. And third, I will have a program to strike down the bureaucratic obstacles that Biden has put in place to the federally funded grant money for charter schools.
So I'm also a military mom. My only son is in the Air Force, two grandsons, 9 and 12, and during the pandemic, I saw how important it was for schools to listen to parents. My grandsons, they don't live in Virginia, they live in Georgia. They didn't miss much school, a couple weeks, because that school listened to their parents, and they stayed in school. They made the honor roll, they played sports, they did all the things that a lot of our children missed out on. That's not right. If our public education is not going to take care of educating our children, we need to have choice. We need to allow people to get tax breaks, possibly vouchers, we need to explore that, so that every child gets the best education that they can in this country. And that's where I stand with that. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. That's an important question. Students are about 17% of the U.S. population, but they're 100% of our future. And if we don't take steps now to ensure that they're educated, that they have the tools to succeed in whatever the next economy is, if we burrow out of this COVID thing, that from a national security perspective, our nation is going to be falling behind Russia. They're going to be falling behind China and what other economies might up growing out there. So we have to make sure that we are investing in our kids, that money follows the kids, just like Pell Grants. When I went to college, I got a Pell Grant. They didn't tell me where I had to go. Same thing with students. If they want to go to private school, they want to do public school, they want to do charter, they want to do homeschool, money should follow the kids.
Look, we need to get the government, especially the federal government, out of education. We need parents to have the sole right to teach their children however they want. I think Ron DeSantis went down the right track with the bill in Florida, but we have to, as the folks in Congress, make sure that our localities who know best what the students need, and most importantly, the parents, are most empowered. I was homeschooled. I was homeschooled from age of 3rd grade on through graduation. I tell people all the time, if I wasn't homeschooled, I told a group of homeschool kids this today, I would not be running for Congress today. And my mother and my father invested heavily in me. That's how I started my businesses. And they paid the same tax load as everybody else, all the folks around me. Now, the federal dollar is only about 10% of each dollar that goes to the students. But I would call it the backpack bill. That money should just follow the student wherever he goes, home, private school. We've got 2 great private schools out here in Middleburg, all over the county, charter schools in inner cities. That is the solution. Get government out, especially the federal government, out of education.
So the problem that we see in our schools is a grasp for power. That's what we see in our world right now. We need to balance power, okay? So we repeal Citizens United, and we give it back to the people. We expand the House, we give our voice back. What this does is, where does that power come from? What comes from special interest? That's where you see the influence being made on your schools. It's from special interest from out of state. We bring the choices back to you, the people that live here. You make the choices. You talk to the teachers, you talk to the school board, and you teach your kids how you want to teach your kids. You don't have to worry about special interests anymore if we repeal Citizens United and we expand the House. Thank you.
Parents' voices matter and school choice matters, whether it's public, private, charter, or homeschooling. But the reality of the situation is the majority of America are going to be public school students. So what are the 4 things that we can do to help improve our education, which 2 sitting members, ranked members of Ed Labor agree with me on? It is, first, literacy. It is the biggest equity and equalizer on all parts of education. It brings up all social economic brackets. The second thing, which no one is talking about, is financial literacy. Our students coming out of school today are not financially literate. We need to teach the children to be ready for the real world today. Third, we need more trade programs. There's been a demonization of the blue-collar workforce. The kids who don't necessarily want to or need to go to secondary education are going to make more money coming out of high school as a plumber, a welder, or a mechanic. And lastly, if you're tech savvy or you have the ability to create new companies, incubator schools, which are going to bring an innovation 4 years further than it ever has before.
So in addition to expanding school choice, as an educator, this is a question I think about a lot, whether I'm teaching in a university classroom or my son. The role of education is to teach a student how to think and not what to think. And I thank God for Governor Youngkin and what he's doing for our students in our schools in reversing how critical race theory has been weaponized and teaching our children what to think, to be woke instead of to be critical thinkers. Critical race has replaced critical thought. When you look at the role of Congress and what can we do, my mom was a third grade teacher my whole life. She would come back every fall and talk about the summer slump. We are seeing a COVID slump when it comes to students that did not have access to technology and resources during the pandemic for literacy, and I think it's very important that we look at this collectively and ensure that our teachers, programs, and students have resources and access to materials to maintain, retain, and become those future thought leaders that will carry on and lead our country.
Congress should definitely not be in the business of picking curriculums. If you look at how bad Common Core was and how it's changed education throughout the country, that was a bad thing. You don't want to give Congress that authority and that power. I think what we need is to give parents options, and I think the best way to do that is through tax credits. If you give vouchers, that just gives the federal government an opportunity to grab a hand into every private school debt, into every homeschool co-op, into every home where they can say, oh, if you want this dollars, we actually have to teach these things. So I think tax credits are a nice middle-of-the-road situation. It gives parents flexibility where they can deduct their expenses for education, but it gives them the most control over where they spend that money in education, and it gives the federal government the least amount of ability to direct and dictate what our kids are learning.
So I'm a homeschool dad. We homeschool our children from kindergarten to high school, and my wife Sally actually did most of it. She's back in a couple rows. We saw the schools failing parents and failing their children, and that's why we decided to homeschool. It worked out well for our kids. They went to college, graduated, and live in the Northern Virginia area. But I know that's not something that everybody is able to do or can afford to do. And I've become more and more convinced, and there's a lot of agreement on here, that school choice is the key. Getting those tax dollars that we all pay at the local level associated with parents and their student, so they can go to the school that gives them the education and keeps their students safe. That is the key for changing the power relationship, putting parents in charge, so the school boards start to realize they work for the parents and not the other way around.
You know, it used to be that the parents were welcome in the classroom, right? Hey, come volunteer. And now they demonize that, and they weaponize the FBI against you. And that ends now. I mean, you want to defund the police, then why don't we just start with defunding FBI and funneling that money to great sheriff like Sheriff Chapman over there who knows what he's doing. Now, I don't know about whether or not I'm going to support the Parents' Bill of Rights. My Parents' Bill of Rights is my kid's birth certificate. All right, that gives me every right in the world to teach my kids the way they're supposed to be taught. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a problem in this country with education, and we have to have a choice. That's why my wife and I homeschool all our kids, and that's why they're top of their classes when it comes to the standardized tests and also when they go to college. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll stand by you, and I'll stand by you as a representative, but I'm going to push everything to the state where it belongs.
Teresa Ellis, will start with you for this next question. With gas prices and the cost of living on the rise, what are your plans for helping families have more money to spend, quite simply?
So as a self-made businesswoman and also a member of the Prince William Chamber of Commerce, and as an elected councilwoman who won in a very diverse community in a very competitive district, I was a liaison for the Economic Development, and I'm currently the liaison for the Airport Commission. So, needless to say, I talk to a lot of businesses and families about their struggles. What do we need to do? We need to make sure we get the supply chain back. And that means getting people back to work. It's that simple. We have to get back to work. We also have to unleash our American resources, open the pipeline, have more research and development for renewable resources, and to become more independent as a nation.
The main issue is not giving, I'd say, people more money. It's how do we make sure the money that they do have buys as much as they can. And with inflation right now, that's the challenge. So I mentioned earlier the American Rescue Act that did not rescue anybody. There's still about $900 billion of that money that hasn't been spent. $350 billion goes to bailouts for states that don't have budget deficits. $129 billion goes to schools when they're already sitting on $50 billion of unspent COVID. So I think you repeal the $900 billion, you take that money out of the economy, you help reduce some of the inflation. Number two, congressional oversight. Do not allow the administrative state to be an autocracy over our lives. That is completely opposite of the rule of law. And as a member of Congress, when I write bills, I will guarantee there will be no left or right balance. There will just be able to do this or this, and that's it. So that they cannot interpret the laws that I wind up legislating.
I think the quickest way that we lower the cost of living has to be being energy independent. I mean, the gas prices at the pump are through the roof. My landscape company, I had to raise all the prices on our lawns 35%. People came to me going, are you kidding me? Are you trying to rob us? I said, no, my gas, my main input has doubled. And that was my entire profit margin. I talked to farmers, one right road here, Whitestone Farm, Middleburg, their corn prices and their fuel prices have tripled. I mean, if we don't get, and most of inflation is actually tied to the fuel prices and the oil prices rather. And if we our solution is going and negotiating with evil dictators around the world, it's not a solution, right? And Democrats, just go buy an electric car. It's only $85,000. I mean, give me a break. Even in the richest guy in the country, I don't see but a dozen Teslas a day. So we've got to have real solutions, which is all of the above. Unleash our economic and ability to just, create energy in this nation. Why not do it? That is the solution. That's what's going to get inflation down the quickest.
So what do I want the federal government to do to help the economy? I want them to get out of the way. Let's make Adam Smith's invisible hand invisible again. Let's lessen regulation. Let's let small businesses compete. Let's give the power back to the people and take away from the corporations. Let's give our voice back so we have a chance to govern ourselves the way our founders intended. Let's run the economy like it was 100 years before we passed the 17th Amendment. I believe that was it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Capitalism is the greatest form of economy in the world. It will fix our problems because capitalism functions like nature, and nature's first instinct is for survival. So if any business grows too big, you better believe there's another one coming for them. Thank you.
Every dollar that we would pay over the last few weeks is worth less than 92 cents on the dollar. The basket of goods that you guys go to at the store, whether it be the grocery store, actually everything in our lives is costing more. 18% here, 20% there. The dollar store isn't even a dollar anymore. It's $1.25. That is a 25% increase. We must fix the problems that this administration is doing. They are ripping apart the fabric of our economy. If we do not send people who understand the complexities, who understand that there is a need, that everything is intertwined. The global economy is just as tied to our local economy. Look at the shelves. Look at where the products are coming from. We must have strong leaders who are looking out for your best interest and want to put more money in your pocket today.
We have to stop and pause and ask ourselves, do we want to be woke or do we want to be broke? We have right now natural energy resources in place to help our energy independence as a country, but politics after politics, decision after decision has put Americans last. Our politicians have literally taken our energy independence hostage, and I just think that if you look at the pipeline, offshore drilling, name it, that on day one, part of my primary focus as your congresswoman will be having these conversations to talk about regaining our energy independence and putting Americans back to work and money back in our paycheck. Biden inflation is a tax to our paycheck.
Inflation's going to take a while to get rid of. So I think we need to look at things we can do in the short term, and obviously that's lowering taxes. I think we need to be careful lowering taxes though, because if you get rid of the gas tax, that affects how our roads get paid. So when you look at things that are affecting everyone, like tariffs, things that affect all the products that come in overseas that we all pay taxes on, that raise the cost of our goods. We need to make sure that we continue to roll back regulations. I love the previous administration's policy of having 2 fewer regulations for every new one added. We need to continue that, and if that comes through Congress, it has to go. We need to make sure we push back on collective bargaining for everyone, because that's going to raise the cost because it's added overhead. And that's something I've been doing on the school board and something we're putting to Congress. And finally, I think we can lower healthcare costs for everyone by trying to have interstate risk pools so that we have more people covered by plans, lowering the costs and driving up innovation.
Yeah, John, that's a great 2-for-1 regulation. It's a great policy the previous administration had. So I wanted to let you know what inflation looks like to me. I come down to the breakfast table every morning, look across the table, and there's my daughter and her husband staring at me. Now, why are they staring at me? They did everything we asked them to. They went off and got a college degree. They both have jobs. They cannot buy a house in this county. They have put down houses that offers 5 times, well over the price. They don't even come close to getting that house. The Biden economy and the Wexit economy is taking the dream away from our next generation of being able to own a house. So we have to get inflation under control. When we get it under control, it'll be like putting $4,000 to $5,000 in everyone's pocket, because that's what inflation is stealing from you right now. And additionally, we need to get our taxes. We need to make those 27 tax cuts permanent so that we can lock in the tax rates that we have today.
So Joe Biden and Corn Pop had this plan called Made in America, right? Made in America except for oil and gas. You know, so now the gas prices have gone up 42%, all right? And we're sitting on a lot of oil here in the United States. And we can't even use it because, you know, now he wants to increase ethanol in our vehicles all through the summer, which I don't know why some liberals like that, because it's destroying the environment, it's causing smog. We need to be energy independent. We need to be energy independent, and then we also need to lower taxes. That's going to invigorate the economy, and that's what we need for America.
So the question is, how do we help a family right now today that's suffering through Biden inflation and Biden's assets and gas prices? And my solution is the Inflation Relief Act. Because these taxes, these Biden inflation taxes and gas taxes are hurting working families. They hurt all Americans, but they most severely hurt low-income working families and retirees on fixed incomes. So my Inflation Relief Act will provide a tax deduction ranging from $10,000 to $20,000 for all persons up through an income level of $100,000, so that we can directly and quickly and immediately address the impact of Biden inflation and Biden gas prices.
Mr. Henley, you get the first shot at the next question. And some of you have touched on energy policy, but let's look at it a little more specifically. You know, we're seeing construction of wind farms off the coast of Virginia. We're seeing growing solar power in the Commonwealth. What would be your approach to powering this country's future?
I look at energy security as national security, and national security is energy security. So I think we need an all-the-above approach. Solar, wind, nuclear, hydro, fossil fuels. The issue with the Biden administration right now pushing renewables is we have to depend on China for 80 to 90% of those minerals that wind up going into wafer boards or whatever we want to do on the electric side. So on the windmill side, wind doesn't always blow. Rivers wind up drying up. Nuclear power plants take 15 years just to get approved, and another 5 to get them built. So fossil fuels, they wind up running 80% of the country. 80% of the country. 20% of it is that other stuff, but you can't put that into the grid because the storage is just not there. So from a petroleum perspective, we're going to wind up staying on fossil fuels for the foreseeable future, because fossil fuels will be the engine that will continue to drive America's economy.
You know, the energy policy and like many issues in our country, they all start to fold into each other. You know, they want to say we use more ethanol and fuel, but you know, you got to have tractors and combines and everything else run that, and the fuel prices of the farmers have gone up. I mean, this stuff all starts to wrap in. additionally, the Biden administration, we're seeing a war, of course, break out in Ukraine, and if Europe had been energy independent as well and built some of these pipelines that we were advocating for, that we could have cut this war off ages ago. Our inability to be energy independent and globally be the sole provider for some of these other nations is leading us to what we see Putin doing in the Ukraine. So again, I'm an all of the above approach, whether it's nuclear, whether it's drilling, whether it's the solar technology, the wind technology. It's nice, but frankly, the technology isn't quite there yet. I believe at some point it will be, but not like AOC says overnight we're going to put one on every single roof and building and everything else. It's just not going to happen. Not to mention what it does with the strip mining, and we have some solar farms here in Foxchase where the ground is completely gotten hardened. It's not going to work.
We need to let capitalism solve the problem. And to do that, it needs a free market. Capitalism built the railroads, cars, and the digital age. Capitalism connects us. Capitalism acts like nature, and nature's first instinct is for survival. Climate change is real, and I don't intend to push this problem to my children. What I would do is I would lessen regulation. I would encourage America's brightest minds to find a new energy source, or one that's already in the works, make it affordable, clean for the environment, so we can have energy independence and a future for our children. Thank you.
We do not need just energy independence. We need self-reliance. We've been blessed to live in a country that has 35 billion barrels of identified crude oil in the ground. We've also been blessed to live in a country that has natural resources and minerals that are beyond any other country. Right now, we are relying on so many foreign powers for all of those minerals and resources. If we continue to go down that road, we will lose our dominance as a world power. Once you are reliant on others, they are not only going to hurt us from a safety standpoint, but they are going to hurt us from an economical standpoint. We live in a world economy. We've been blessed with so many things within the grounds of this great country. Our founding fathers wanted us to be the strongest leaders in the world, and we need to do that through energy independence.
So the question on wind farms, I've spoken to people about this issue, and we agree that the large-scale wind farms that litter the coast of California are not solutions for Virginia's beautiful countryside. When we look at the traditional fossil fuels that are very important to Virginia, that America just frankly cannot pull away their use of, we know these things to be valuable and true, and at the same time, America's growing need of energy is growing, and so we don't have a choice but to expand how we look at and view these things. And so I look at solar energy, nuclear energy, and carbon capture with the planting of trees as ways to expand and power our country's energy and future moving forward.
In the short term, I think we should still continue focusing on our existing oil infrastructure. It's well built out, it's available to everything, and we have the opportunity to get energy to everyone's cars, houses, cell phones, no matter what it is. I think in the long term, though, we need to start thinking about nuclear energy. And one of those things we can do in Congress is give the Nuclear Regulatory Commission the blessing, the impetus to design new reactors. They have the same reactor designs from 40 years ago, and we're stuck building big smokestacks in the middle of the rural areas because no one wants them in their neighborhoods. But there's an opportunity to build small nuclear power plants that can provide energy where it's needed, be built quickly, and there are companies already working on these designs. If you look at Germany, they shut down all their nuclear reactors, and now they're relying on Russia for all their energy. France is 75% from nuclear. What we need to do, if we can power our Navy with nuclear energy, we can power our neighborhoods with nuclear energy.
So you've heard a lot of really great answers here, and I agree with what all my co-candidates have said. So I want to just use the balance of my time to do something a little different. I was down in Rappahannock talking to the sheriff, and they're really struggling getting people to enter into law enforcement. And so I walked away from that really rededicating myself to make sure that we honor our law enforcement, and we make that career attractive to our kids coming out of high school, because we really need people becoming law enforcement. So I'm going to ask, if you're in this audience, if you are currently or were a law enforcement officer, would you please stand up? look at is go talk to the sheriff's office or a police office about a career in law enforcement.
Alternative energy is not reliable energy. Okay, and then not only that, they don't talk about how they're going to get rid of the lithium batteries afterwards. How do they get rid of the 200-foot-long fiberglass blades that needs basically diamond cutters to cut across? I've been in the Navy. We've used nuclear power for 75 years. And let me explain one thing: it's safe. Okay, if you keep Hyman Rickover's programs, you'll never ever come close to being critical or much less supercritical. And here's another thing: to cool the plants, you'll need a lot of seawater. And you can do that with a flash-type distiller, a 4-stage flash-type distiller. Which, imagine California having unlimited water source, potable water source. They would never ever have a drought again. And that's how we're going to really revitalize this country.
So focusing on energy, Biden's energy policy is pure folly. We've seen from the brownouts in California, the blackouts in Texas, that we're not ready to pivot dramatically from fossil fuels. We need a common sense, integrated approach to energy. That includes fossil fuels, nuclear energy, geothermal energy, solar energy, wind energy. And then we let the free market work. We are the greatest country for innovation, and innovation will carry us forward to the future for energy. But we need to exercise common sense and be responsible and follow an integrated approach as we transition and innovation finds new, efficient energy sources to power this nation. Thanks.
Yeah, it needs to be a mixed approach. We need to have wind, solar, electric power comes from fossil fuel, but technology needs to catch up. It's getting faster, it's getting cheaper, but we're not there yet. I'm going to share an example. So on council, we look at the school budget, biggest part of our budget. And something came up. Two Republicans on our council. We have to battle every single day for your wallet. And we're talking about bringing in electric buses. Found out there are 2 school districts, one in Virginia, one in Maryland, that we know of, that bought about 25 electric buses. Guess what? 5 of them are functional. One bus with fuel, about 100,000. Electric bus, 300,000. Do the math. Look how much money they wasted, your tax money.
Caleb, that's your turn to go first for that next question. I don't think I've ever covered a Republican candidate who doesn't advocate a reduction in federal spending. So please be specific if you can and name 1 or 2 areas where you would begin to make cuts or eliminate programs.
So one of the most obvious ones to me is, I read a CNBC article today said that corporations spend an average of $8 billion a year on CRT and race theory, all that. Imagine how much our government's spending it and we don't even know about it. I root all of that out. Secondly, there's just so much waste and abuse. Today I was reading an article, we spent $2 million in 2021 on a study to determine if hot tubs were relaxing. This is ridiculous. And then an even worse one, $1.3 million to determine whether or not people will eat crushed up bugs in their food. And I tell you, I haven't spent a lot of time in Washington, D.C., but I know a few bird brains down there that would eat bugs and put it from it. I think it cost me $1.3 million to determine that, and I just read the Washington Post. So this is the government that we've been handed, the reckless spending we've been handed. We could all sit up here all night and talk about all the programs we cut. The big word there, though, is we have to deliver. We actually have to do it. We talk about cutting every time we get a Republican majority, then suddenly it goes out the window when it becomes not politically beneficial. It's not going to happen with me when I get to Congress.
I don't want to make Band-Aid fixes. I want to expand the House so we can solve the problem. Since 1920, the population has tripled. The government has grown, there are more government agencies, more oversight to perform, but the representation stays the same. I bet most congressional committees rubber stamp budgets because they don't have time to read them. The problem is too much work and not enough employees. If we hire more employees, we expand the House, they'll be able to dig into those budgets and get rid of the waste he was just talking about. The reason it gets through is because nobody sees it, because there aren't enough employees. expand the House. And I'm going to correct myself from earlier. I said 17th Amendment. What I meant was 16th. I'm sorry.
I'm actually very fiscally conservative, so much so that I'm driving two 1999 cars right now because I refuse to pay over sticker for a new vehicle. What we need is all the spending that has gone on in the last few years. The printing presses are on fire. We are spending ourselves into oblivion. If we do not address the spending, we are going to bankrupt the country. We already actually are bankrupt. A lot of these bills have forward spending that's in the future. We need to immediately cut those costs. If we can't pay your bills today, how are you going to buy the new car tomorrow? We need to be able to put ourselves in a fiscally strong situation. The only way to do that is have people who are willing to stand up and fight for your dollars, who understand the complexities of the world economy, the local economy, and everything that goes into it. This is the time that we put our fiscal situation on the table, not just for us today, but for our future generations.
I would like to see cutbacks in spending in the Department of Education. I believe that quality in education belongs with the state. The president's budget for 23, when you look at the health and human services, is out of control. That's an area that needs to be cut back as well. But I'll tell you, along with cutbacks, I'm fiscally conservative. The two areas where I will never compromise spending and where our Democratic opponents have cut spending for our border security and our law enforcement, it's priceless when it comes to keeping our families, children, community, and country safe.
30% of our $4.5 trillion budget goes into government subsidies of all sorts, and the list is really, really long. So I think we need to work and make sure that if you look at it, really we're subsidizing everything. When you subsidize everything, you really don't subsidize anything. It's just a transfer of wealth from one person to another. So we need to cut subsidies as much as possible in order to let the free market really reign and let these industries compete and to grow and to provide innovation rather than stagnation. I think another thing we can do, and I'm saying this just as a young man, so we can push this back a little bit, but I think we need to start looking at revising the retirement age as people live longer. It's going to probably be 30 or 40 years from now, and I think that's one way we can help lower our Social Security costs and go there. And then finally, I think we can work on converting Medicaid into block grants, giving that money to the states, and having them work on trying different innovative solutions in order to cut costs and to reduce the waste in all this so that that money that goes to them is spent properly.
Yeah, I really like that block grant idea. That's great. That's a great idea. So first of all, there are a couple areas I would go after, but I think the entire budget needs to be out there on the table to be looked at. We need to find a way to get back to a balanced budget. With a $30 trillion debt, if our interest rates normalize back into the 3 or 4% level, we're going to be paying more in interest than we are in national defense, which is not sustainable. So we need to be looking at all the areas of the government budget. I think specifically we should be looking at things like EPA, ATF, the FDA, and the Department of Education. You get two benefits there. First of all, you can cut some costs, but then more importantly, you have a bunch of bureaucrats who are passing regulations and creating an administrative state that seems to be more powerful than Congress. And so you also cut back on that activity going on, which I think is really important.
Okay, when I was not hunting Al-Qaeda, Taliban, and Al-Shabaab, I was writing the Navy's budget. I know how to go line by line. I know how to look for unexpended growth or under execution. I know how to go line by line and see where we can cut back. And as a budgeteer, I know how to do a peanut butter spread, which is a budgetary term where you do a cut across the board. Then you look for those items that can take vertical kills where it's not going to affect the budget, and that's what I'm going to do.
So in terms of specific places to cut the budget, we can start with the Department of Education. It's a state and local government issue, and we don't need bureaucracy and programs of the federal government infiltrating and indoctrinating our students at the local level. Second, wouldn't it be nice if we could scale back the IRS by simplifying the tax code? That would be number 2. And finally, I don't know if you all are tracking this, but Congress did pass an omnibus budget bill. It reinstituted earmarks. And this bill had 4,000 earmarks covering $8 billion. And nobody knows what they are. The bill was over 2,000 pages. Nobody read it. Biden certainly didn't read it. So, my proposal is that we reinstitute the moratorium on earmarks, because all those earmarks is Congress feasting on pork, and we need to bring it to an end.
So as a small business owner that has been in business for more than 30 years, I have seen the ebbs and flows of the economy, and I know how to cut spending. That's how you survive. And we need to do that as a country. But I'm going to tell you what I would never cut. So I'm going to steal Mr. Beckett's what he did here, military. Anybody military or families of military, raise your hands. I will never cut the military budget. And I'll tell you something that I fought to not cut as a city councilwoman, defunding the police. I actually had to go to battle for our law enforcement to make sure they had what they needed to keep our families and neighborhoods safe. I will never, ever cut the military or anything to do with our public safety. So what would I cut? I like to look at funding to other countries. What are we giving them and why? You know, it is time that we look at America as first again.
Thank you.
This has been an interesting forum. I almost forgot the question there for a second. But yeah, you know, my last 2 years in legislative affairs, I actually defended a $236 billion portfolio that consisted of F-35s, F-16s, F-15s, tankers, bombers, nuclear, cyber. So going through the line by line and being able to talk with members of Congress saying, this is why this is important. We have men and women downrange who need this capability. So it's more than just cutting and throwing things away. It's cutting but knowing what you're cutting and why you're cutting. So two things I would cut immediately. Department of Education has $84 billion. That pays for bureaucracy, not student outcomes. That's an easy one to get rid of. It's been used as a political pawn by both Republicans and Democrats. The other one is foreign direct aid. That's about $46 billion in the budget. We wind up giving it to about 13 countries, one who hate America, two that don't share our values, and three does not get down to the people.
Jeffrey, maybe you'll start us off with the next one. Taking a look at the recent foreign policy crises in Afghanistan and Ukraine, what type of approach would you advocate for American foreign policy? What could have been done better in those circumstances?
So I would advocate for a balanced approach. I would work with all Americans to make sure that we create foreign policy that's consistent from administration to administration. The problem we have is each administration comes in, they have their own ideas, and they want to implement them. Foreign policy is built on strong relationships, and strong relationships are built on communication and consistency. We need red line rules for engagement, and that engagement should be determined by Congress, not the president. When I'm in Congress, or if I'm elected, if you're nice enough to elect me, I would work with other members of Congress to bring the war powers back where it belongs, back where it was intended, to the people. Because it's our sons and daughters who go out there and risk their lives. It's the people's right. Thank you.
Our foreign policy has been reactive versus proactive. It has cost the lives of Americans and has left Americans behind, which is completely unacceptable. What we also have is world leaders who are playing three-level chess while this administration plays shoots and ladders, flicking little things, saying, I hope I don't land on a 6 and go back to go. That is what they're doing every single time. We need strong leaders. We need to be respected as a world power. We are in a global economy. If we are not respected internationally, we are going to put ourselves not only in a risk of safety, but we are going to risk your pocketbooks and our economy. We need strong leaders. We need people to fight for us, fight for our military, and fight for you guys here.
Peace is always maintained through strength. When we look at Biden's response to Afghanistan and Ukraine, why are we surprised? Putin could sit back very easily and see that Biden had no interest or ability to protect sovereign borders. Biden opened up the United States southern border where illegal immigrants are flooding in, along with America's #1 deadly killer for 18 to 45-year-olds, fentanyl, on a daily basis. Putin knew that Biden would sit back, watch him invade Ukraine, and today Chairman Xi is doing the same scenario planning as he plots and looks to his future potential invasion of Taiwan. Today, every piece of nuclear apparatus, policy, procedures, and plans that have kept this country safe since the Cold War, that ship sailed with invasion of Ukraine. We have to have leaders in Congress on day one that can discuss, implement, plan, and strategize our nuclear deterrent and nuclear policy, because that is what keeps this country safe in every other regard.
I think the focus has to be on deterrence, having forces, and really hoping never having to use them, but being willing to use them should the need arise. We can look at economic sanctions that we talked about for months and months leading up to the war in Ukraine, and we can see that they really have limits, and they don't encourage people to really change. And in fact, they're encouraging other countries to move away from the dollar. We've got separate deals now between Russia and India to sell oil, and who knows what's happening between Russia and China. We need to focus on having a serious threat around the country, around the world, so that people are less willing to go into other countries that we have not necessarily treaties with, but understandings with to support them. Because if we're unserious in those situations, like we're with Afghanistan, like we look like with Taiwan, the big other players are not going to respect us, and they're going to go after us and end up causing more damage and taking more lives.
The way we left Afghanistan, the loss of our fellow military members there, sent the message to the world of weakness, and that sowed the seeds for what we're seeing in Ukraine. Unfortunately, there's no way to undo that catastrophic event. So what we need to do is Congress, because we need to wait for a president who understands strength. We need a Congress that will show that strength to the world. We need to invest in our military. We need to stop decreasing spending, which is what we're doing. As we get 5% is what we increased it, but inflation's at 8%. And we need to start increasing our budget 1 or 2% above inflation. And instead of having fewer ships after we spend all that money, we actually need to have more ships, because that's what the Chinese are doing. And we need to show peace through strength to deter our adversaries. We can't wait for the next president. We need Congress to do it immediately.
When I left Afghanistan in January 2021, it was pretty stable. It wasn't, we're not walking downtown in Middleburg here, okay, but it's pretty stable. We had a plan to have 2,500 troops there, and President Biden didn't approve or disapprove it, just let it go, and then we lost Kabul 6 months later, and that's wrong. In Ukraine, what I would do, mobilize the naval response force. It has a humanitarian assistance, disaster relief arm of it, but you can put it right on the border. It protects, basically, you build a 10-mile buffer zone around there that will give the 2 million displaced persons a respite area. And in terms of budgeting, again, we're 8.5% inflation. Every time I read the budget, it's 2% inflation that we allocate for. That means we're $46 billion in the hole as we start off. That's 4 carriers. That's 36 guided missile destroyers. That's 335 F-35s that we need in South China Sea.
So when it comes to Afghanistan and Ukraine, the first thing that went wrong was that Biden moved into the Oval Office. And then the mistakes started. He decided to shut down U.S. domestic energy production and focus on dealing with Russia and making the U.S. and the European Union dependent on Russian oil. And as soon as we did that, we lost all our leverage. And hence, what happened in Ukraine. Biden was slow to impose sanctions because we were dependent on Russian oil. He was slow to arm Ukraine because he was dependent on Russian oil.
I just want to remind everyone that April is the month of the military child. Our military and their families and children sacrifice so much for our freedoms. I'm very honored, actually, to be a candidate with such amazing veterans up here. on stage. I am actually in all of them. So like I said, my son, he is in the Air Force. 18 years, he served in Afghanistan with Special Forces. I actually said goodbye to my son as he went off to war. And also my daughter, she went to Iraq. When we saw what happened with Afghanistan, we were sick. And actually we cried because we knew people over there that had sacrificed their life for that war. The withdrawal from Afghanistan could have been executed so much better. Keeping Bagram, getting civilians out first, and applying the basics of any withdrawal that would have prevented this disastrous exit. Ukraine could have taken action much sooner, starting sanctions, building coalitions, and being more serious.
Mr. Henley? Yes, ma'am. Weren't we told when Biden was elected that, hey, he has 50 years of foreign policy experience? What could go wrong? Well, you see what went wrong. You know, Afghanistan, the border, just about everything he's touched has been a disaster. You know, I have 2 kids, active duty, Air Force. I spent 28 years active duty, Air Force. I had one incompetent commander-in-chief. His name was Obama. Clinton was bad, but Obama takes the cake. My sons have had Obama and Biden. And for the life of me, if I'm one of the parents of those 13 who were killed, I would be pissed off right now, and I would be running for Congress. But thankfully, I jumped forward for them. I hope to represent them, and I hope to impeach him.
Of course, the pullout in Afghanistan was a disaster. The number one thing we should have kept in mind when we executed that pullout was do not leave until every single American citizen is off the ground. Period. Hard stop. Ukraine, sanctions after the attack were no good. Then, of course, Putin's just going to double down. We should have been sending them aid and showing that we are going to defend them way long ago, way before the invasion ever begun. At this point, it's almost too late. But I'll tell you, I think what we should do is get in council with generals like General Keane and Petraeus to go and ask Ukraine, what do you really need? What are the solutions? How can America help without getting world war started? And lastly, let's not forget that China is the one who's really behind both of these countries. China has imprisoned 3 million Uyghur Muslims. They've persecuted Christians. They have a stated goal of taking over the entire world by 2050. They've moved that up since COVID. They are the real enemy. And if we don't start combating them at the same time we combat Russia and other countries, then we fail with the next generation of disservice. We've kicked the China can down the road too long.
Brenda Mijan, we start the next question with you. As you know, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act was signed into law back in November. It was approved with the help of some Republican votes. How would you have voted on that measure and why?
I would have voted no, because a lot of people who are currently serving in Congress are financially illiterate. If we continue to spend, if we continue to go down the road we are going to put ourselves in a fiscal situation that we cannot come back from. This world, this economy that we live in is extremely complex. The capital markets, again, I said it earlier, and I will continue to pound the table on it. Our economy is complex. Capital markets move instantaneously. Gas prices change. We must be fiscally conservative. We must cut the spending. We must take all of the social agendas and party agendas out of our bills and go back to doing what's best for the country. Fixing the foundation of America, which is education, safety, the economy. We must fix the foundation. Someone else can come fix the walls and the roof, but we must fix the foundation first.
I would have voted no because there was too much garbage in the bill. I think it's very important to vote with single issues. This is a time where Democrats were struggling, the opposition was down, and the people that represented us rolled over and gave them a win. And as your congresswoman, those strategic options are not a win for our party, so that would be an easy no for me.
I wouldn't support this bill, and I think that's because we have so many spending habits that we really need to get fixed and to get our debt under control. I'm not in favor of local pork spending. Our congresswoman has been bragging about she got $2 million for the Middleburg fire station. I think that should be a local issue. I think the Loudoun County should put that in the CIP, and they should spend the money for that, rather than the federal government getting control again of local issues. However, I do think there is a room for federal spending and big infrastructure projects. If we look at the Potomac River, we absolutely need some more bridges over there. But that's 2 states And those are big projects where you need coordination between multiple people. And that's really where you get the interstate commerce costs coming in and helping to manage that and to guide that spending to help all of us so we can have better traffic around the DC area.
Yeah, I would not have voted for that bill for at least two reasons. First of all, and it's been very well said by other candidates, there was not a lot of infrastructure in that bill, and it also locked in a lot of Green New Deal activity and infrastructure. And although I'm all for all energy sources competing evenly to see which one wins the market, I do not like the idea of subsidizing green energy in particular. It ought to be able to stand on its own. The second reason I wouldn't have voted for it is it was not the right time. We were just about to explode. Inflation was just about to explode. That was not the time to be doing a big jobs program. And oh, by the way, with that inflation, we're only getting about a third or a half, and I'm estimating there, of the actual infrastructure, because things are costing so much that everything is costing more, and so we're actually going to get fewer infrastructure activities done.
Less than 25% of that bill is for infrastructure. All right. I mean, look, here's some of the things that it's basically the Green New Deal in disguise. I mean, AOC's plan, right? I mean, there's nothing about the XL pipeline. $50 billion in Amtrak. A lot of it in Canada. Okay, charging stations for electric cars. A civilian climate corps. I had to write this part down because I almost vomited. Advanced racial equity and environmental justice. Are you freaking kidding me? No, we'll never sign us up for that. That's our money.
Well, you stole my thunder on that one. Just to put this in context, this bill was $1.2 trillion. It was 2,700 pages long. Nobody read it. Nobody understood it. And as everyone's highlighted today, it had little to do with infrastructure and everything to do with a lot of progressive agenda items, radical agenda items. We need to get back to fiscal responsibility. We need to exercise some common sense. We need to push back against these reckless spending bills. We need to move forward with planned infrastructure. Congress should be legislating based on single issues where the bill gets vetted in committee, gets debated, and gets voted on. We need to restore the standard process for legislation, and with a Republican majority, we will do that.
So if it was actually infrastructure, I would have voted yes, but however, I would have voted no on this particular one because of all the stuff that was not infrastructure in that bill. That advanced racial equity and environmental justice, $20 billion. $175 billion in subsidies for electric vehicles. $100 billion for new public schools and making school lunches greener. Doesn't sound like infrastructure to me. As Republicans, we have to take this type of act and chop it down so that we can vote for it line by line individually. And on council, I have to do it all the time. They like to come with one big package to try to slide through what they want. And you have to fight against that. And I will fight against that as your congresswoman.
I would have been a big no, mainly because of the green energy initiatives that are in there. That subsidizes China's economy, not ours. Again, like I said earlier, 80 to 90% of the minerals, China owns the market on that. So anything that we do from a green energy perspective invests in Chinese economies. Whether it be in Malaysia where they own factories. What I would have preferred, I like roads, I like bridges, I like broadband, especially putting in Rappahannock County, but I would have really liked for them to put a new supply chain effort for those minerals, so those minerals are mined in the United States, those leases are taken care of in other countries, so that we can become independent. Again, we have to rely on China for antibiotics. We shouldn't have to rely on them for anything else. America is still a strong nation. We just have weak leaders. It's time to send leaders to Congress and politicians packing.
So I would have voted no, but it doesn't mean that there's not real infrastructure issues that our country is facing. And I think it's unfortunate that here we are, $30 trillion in debt, $80 trillion by 2030, and our bridges are crumbling, like that bridge in Pittsburgh right before Joe Biden got there. Well, there's 386 other bridges in the country that rank worse than that. I mean, that's a very scary thing. Now, the unfortunate thing about this infrastructure bill is it really bailed out big city, Democrat-run cities and governors that have not, invested in their own infrastructure and done these projects for a long, long time. And everybody in this room, where we do have some infrastructure issues here, not nearly to the extent that they do, end up getting funded by all of us. And it's just not fair. And Schumer and a lot of these Democrats have made out like villains. I mean, over $50 billion to New York, $66 billion, I believe, for Amtrak. I mean, these were all Democrat handouts. And most of the infrastructure has to be done by companies that are pro-union. And so we know this increases the cost as well. So I would have voted no, but we also have to recognize we have real infrastructure issues that need to be tackled.
The bill was 2,700 pages long for infrastructure. I haven't read it, so it'd be really hard for me to tell you if I would vote for it or not. But I bet you there was a lot of stuff in that bill pushed by special interests. And I bet you didn't hear about it because you can't talk to your representative. What would I do? Well, I'd repeal Citizens United and give you your power back. What would I do? I would expand the House and give you your voice back. But the reason we have these problems, we just don't have good leaders. We don't have people that have your interests at heart. Infrastructure is a problem. He mentioned it, and a lot of other people mentioned it on the stage. But that's a local problem. We need to solve those problems. The states and local governments need to prioritize what is their job, not what they want to do. Thank you.
Brooke Taylor, it's your chance to go first. And we're going to take a quick break from issues, kind of an unusual question perhaps. Which elected leader, current or former, do you admire most and why?
That's a fun question. I admire Margaret Thatcher. She was the world's most powerful woman, and she made the United Kingdom a superpower because her decisions were based not on politics, but on the right thing to do. And I look to that model of leadership and admire and respect it a lot.
I'm going to dig deep on this one, go back about 2,000 years to a guy named Cicero. He was elected consul, so he was elected. He worked in the Roman Senate, and he wrote this book called On Duties. And that was an ancient text, but this influenced our founding fathers. You go down to George Mason's statue down by the reflecting pond, he's sitting there, he's got On Duties in his hand. That's how important this text was to our country, even though it was 1,700 years old at the time. And it's just as important today, because it talks about doing the honorable thing in every situation. Amnesty is what he calls it. And he shows that being honorable is always the best thing. It's always politically expedient in the long run. And that's how I worked on the school board, and that's how I'm going to work in Congress for you.
So I'd like to pick the leader that I think has a lot to do with me sitting on the stage. I lived through the 70s in my elementary school, junior high, and saw the long gas lines, saw a country seemingly on the wrong track, maybe declining. And it was President Reagan who was elected as I was going into high school that brought a new enthusiasm, a new vision for our country of what the future could be. And he changed the whole trajectory of the country. He changed my trajectory. I was motivated and inspired by him to go join the Air Force. I went through ROTC, and that led to a 30-year career of service to our nation. And that's what led me eventually to decide to do a different kind of service, which is to run for Congress. That strong leadership, that vision, we're in a very similar circumstances than he was. And I can see, just like he did, I can see a better day tomorrow if we pull together and we elect the right strong leaders to positions.
Teddy Roosevelt. Imagine that today he would be labeled as toxic male masculinity, right? I mean, that's a man's man. That's not a beta male. He's not a leaf eater, right? He's going out there, I mean, his country called and he led the charge, with the Rough Riders. He was a Secretary of Navy. As a president, he sent forward the Great White Fleet to show how great this country is, right? He said, speak softly and carry a big stick. I mean, when he was in the Amazon with his son, he almost died. He's like, leave me, son. But his son pulled him out. He contrasted today to a man who had 5 deferments from Vietnam for asthma, okay? I mean, seriously, I think one word, it starts with a C, ends with our.
So looking at our times today, and the challenging times we're in, I think about the great Republican presidents who responded in great moments of history. I think about Abraham Lincoln and how he articulated the essence of our government in 9 words: the government of the people, for the people, by the people. I think of Ronald Reagan, and I think how Jimmy Carter made it possible for Ronald Reagan to revitalize America. When I fast forward today and think about Biden, he's making it possible for there to be a Republican tsunami in November. And then I look at our Congress. We have a lot of great conservative leaders in our Congress today. One is a Virginia Congressman, Beckman. Strong conservative, but he's a problem solver and solution focused. And that's the kind of congressman I would be. I'll bring my legal expertise, my senior business expertise, and be a problem solver.
So like I said in the past question, I have a degree in business communication. So Ronald Reagan, he was the great communicator. He was also an outsider. He was an actor. A lot of people didn't take him serious at first, even though he was the governor of California. He brought us together as a country, and he got things done. We also had a great economy under Ronald Reagan. And you're right, with Carter, he had a lot of work to do, but he got it done. And he was strong on foreign policy. And we need to get back to that. We need to have leaders like Ronald Reagan in Congress, in the White House. That's the person I admire the most.
This sounds repetitive, but definitely President Reagan. I remember as a young teenager out in Ventura, California, out on the beach, you'd see Marine One come across, and you'd see the Gipper waving at you. That's something you don't forget. That's something that impacts you. He was shot. He survived. He defeated the Soviet Union. He turned the economy around. And for this guy who was homeless at the time, gave me hope. And now I'm running for Congress. Only in America, Reagan's America, that he laid the foundation so that all of us can live in a free society. And that is my dream.
Have you all ever heard of an old congressman named Frank Wolf? Of course, that's my role model. He's influenced my life heavily. The other day, he called me 3 times. About 7 in the morning, I knew something. He was so important. He called. I finally answered. He said, "Caleb, Congress is in decay. The institution is failing." And he goes, "Frankly, I don't know why you want to go there." But the things that people appreciate about my granddad is he always voted his conscience. He always knew that he was going to stick to his conservative values. But the best part is he knew he was going to beat the Democrats like a drum in November, and he did it consistently over and over again. But he did it not with some secret sauce or funding or some message or because of something he said. He did it because he consistently delivered for the district. When people came into his office, he listened. He has his best constituent services. When I go around the district, people all the time say your granddad did X, Y, Z in the 80s, the 90s. He delivered, and he's taught me that you have to vote your character, your conscience, but also deliver for the people that are in your district.
I'm so excited to answer this question. My congressional role model is James Madison. He wrote the Constitution, and he took notes so he knew the why and not just the what. He looked back when he was writing the Constitution to the Greeks and the Romans, and he asked himself, man, are there any notes? Why did they decide to do this? Intent is important in understanding rule of law. He was just a remarkable man. He left them for us, and he wasn't afraid to admit when he was wrong and grow as a man and as a politician. He was a fascinating individual, and we are lucky to have him. He wrote in both Federalist Number 10 and 51, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. He is why I'm sitting here. I was inspired by him when I read his biography, and I've been inspired by all of our founders along the way. And I thank you very much for letting me speak with you tonight. Thank you.
I've I've got to know a man over the last year and a half that has leadership and integrity. That man is now governor of Virginia, Governor Glenn Youngkin. I'm the only person up here, the only person in this race who stood by him pre-convention. I'm also the only person in this race who stood by him on day one of his administration when he signed the executive orders, following through on his promise to deliver. Leadership is hard. Leadership is showing up when other people aren't looking. Leadership is talking to your school boards, talking to your board of supervisors, being a person who's going to say, here's what I'm going to do, I can't be bought, my integrity is more important, and this is what a true leader is. I have had the blessing of getting to know Glenn Youngkin. He's a true example of leadership and integrity. He's a true example of what we all need to be. I look forward to being that example in Washington and following through on the promises that I made today.
We started a little late, so we're going to squeeze in one more question, even though it is 9 o'clock. And we're back to the beginning with John Beatty. He'll start this one. Some of you have talked about small business already, but this will give you a chance to expand on it. The American Rescue Act was aimed in part, as we know, in helping small businesses get through the pandemic, but many still suffered, some were forced to close. What measures are needed right now to revitalize small business?
Employees are the biggest cost drivers for any small business, and I work at a small school and I see that in the financial sides. And I think healthcare is the biggest cost aside from salary for each of those employees. So whatever we can do to lower healthcare costs, we're going to make it easier for our small businesses to survive pandemics, to grow and to thrive, so they can spend money and invest in things other than healthcare. And I think we do that by opening up risk pools to at least the state. When you're a small business, the risk pool is your business. I was a two-person app company, and myself, my business partner, and our small families, it was $10,000 a month just for health insurance. When we were starting out, and we didn't really have much to go on. That's incredibly expensive, but if we were part of a bigger risk pool, or the whole state of Virginia, for example, it would have been much cheaper, just like our auto insurance or other insurance policies. And then we need to work on greater cost transparency so that you know what you're spending your money on, so that you can shop between providers, and that'll help drive down the cost as well as you find providers that provide the best services at the best cost.
The current environment that we're in makes it really hard for our small businesses to understand what their return on investment is going to be, whether they can afford to hire somebody new or not. So I really think that's the key thing in Congress that we need to be working on. And that really comes to stopping all the regulations. It was estimated that there are about $200 billion worth of regulations that the Biden administration put onto our businesses in their first year. And also, that just causes extra work, extra investments that those businesses have to do, and they don't know what's coming next. And of course, the second thing is tax structure. The president's budget is calling for the business tax to raise from 21 to 28%. Businesses don't know if that's going to be the tax environment they're in. So we need to make sure we stop all of the future tax increases, and we need to lock in the tax base so our small businesses understand what their return investment is going to be.
Look, the best thing for government to do is to stay out of the way. Every time they get their hands in it, they muck things up. I mean, it's terrible. They should have never shut down businesses. Since when does government get to tell you when you open your store, who you let in, what you check at the door, what they stick on their face and what they stick in their bodies? Never. Let Americans be Americans. We're the greatest country in the world. Trust me, I've lived all over the world, and this is the greatest country in the world. We invented the light bulb, the plane, the automobile. We put a man in the moon. We invented the radio, the telephone. We can figure it out. We don't need government to tell us what to do. Just stay out of the way. And stay out of our homes, stay out of our churches, and stay the hell away from our kids.
So as a lawyer, I've worked with many small businesses, helping them navigate the complexities of burdensome regulation, helping them grow their business, helping them be successful, helping them create jobs. But you should need a lawyer to start a business. And you should need a lawyer to run your business like you do today. We need to simplify the regulatory process. We need to lift the regulatory burdens so that businesses can start up more easily, operate more easily, without having to figure out navigate a complex legal and regulatory structure. So the first issue is simplification of the business regulations that are hurting business right now. Second, in relation to the sort of inflation tax deduction. You know, these businesses have costs, energy costs, and they're suffering from the same inflationary impediments. So we need to have a tax relief to enable them to execute their business and be successful and create jobs.
So we need to spur and support the entrepreneurial spirit of people that want to start businesses. But we also have to make sure that we support innovation and technology and workforce training to incentivize employers to be able to give them what they need to retain them as well. We have to make sure that businesses can always keep their doors open. So I have a background in healthcare management. I held leases, I owned clinics, I contracted with doctors, I hired support staff, and hired people to do the books and oversee and wrote paychecks. Every person that came in that door in healthcare, we knew could make us sick or possibly kill us. We had to adjust. And it made me very upset to see how businesses were not given the right to keep their doors open and adjust and pivot in order to keep food on their table.
You gotta let small business be small business. One thing, you know, I'm a small business owner. We have a small farm out in Oaksville. I read an interesting statistic. Before COVID, 20% of all businesses that are started fail within the first year. 50% fail within 5 years. So after 5 years, you only have 30% of the small businesses. These are entrepreneurs. They're people that pour their heart, their soul, their money, their talent into something to deliver a good service so that they can make a living. A lot of the issues of their failures was government intrusion, regulations, the lack of low-interest loans to be able to go out and grow your business. And then being able to find talent to be able to keep you in business and to grow and to bring folks in that can take over for you. So we got to get government back out, especially given coming out of COVID. The small businesses are going to take us out of this.
Look, the small businesses of today are the big businesses of tomorrow. Amazon started in a garage, Henry Ford started on a farm, the Wright brothers started in a bike shop. That's the best part about being in this country. We start businesses, and those businesses end up becoming very big, and we end up lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty, and we really create and we lead. My generation has started the least amount of small businesses, or businesses as a whole, of every generation before it since before the early 1900s. That's a big problem. We have to get back to the point in this country where we create, where we start business, where we hire our neighbors. These communities, these small businesses are such an important fabric of our communities where we go as gathering places. Otherwise, I had a deli. I lost it because of the incompetence of government and how they handled the post-pandemic fallout from the closures and everything else. And it really punished millions of small businesses that have still not recovered. And so we've got to make sure that we're investing in them and investing in the next generation of small businesses.
So I actually own a small business, like a real small business. I started when I was 19 years old. I tried to get a loan through the SBA, but at 19 years old with very little credit, they would not give me one. They wouldn't even talk to me. Essentially, you needed to be a medium-sized business to get a small business loan. So, what's one of the biggest problems I struggle with? Employees. Now, this is pre- and post-pandemic. Why do I struggle with employees? Well, part of that's the education system. We're pushing kids to college when we should be teaching skills. We need more employees in the market. We can solve that locally in our regular market, not a federal government issue. We gotta get federal government out of the way, right? That's what they all say. What is in the way? It's the special interest. Repeal Citizens United and get them out of the way. Look, owning a small business is hard. I have a family of 5. I work a lot. I'm here to make a difference. I put in the work. This is a job. I'm applying for a job right now. I love my business. Thank you.
I used to work with the largest bank in the United States, and now I'm self-employed with 2 partners. I'm a definition of a small business as well. But what we have is small businesses are feeling 3 things: wage inflation, supply chain inflation, and spending inflation. I used to have a corporate car, like a spend what I need. Now it's my own, and I have to decide whether those dollars are going into my pocket or being spent for services or needs that I have. Small businesses need to be incentivized to grow. We will grow into larger companies through innovation and technology. We need to be able to support our small businesses. We need to be able to think about the economy in a way that protects small businesses through stopping inflation of our supply chains, of our wages, and of our spending. And the best part about being a part of a small business is no one can tell me that I can't say, let's go Brandon.
Work is a gift. So my dad was a small business owner. He had a restaurant. I went to work with him from the time I was 4 years old till I graduated high school, most if not every Saturday. The things that were modeled in that time with him were to be authentic, to work hard, and to take risks. Following the pandemic, he sold his restaurant this past January, not because there wasn't a customer base, but because there wasn't a workforce. It's time to open up business, not only to keep it open, but to incentivize the workforce to apply for jobs, to show up with a work ethic. Democrats want to pay you to stay home. They use the pandemic for a cover that's always been their strategy, which is cradle to grave dependence on the government. Republican spirit and our fabric of who we are as a party is to work hard, and that is a gift that needs to be reinstilled, and that will help our small businesses.
As we start to wrap up, I want to start by thanking all of the candidates. With 10 people here, I didn't think it would be that smooth. But thank you for your cooperation. Thanks for being Thanks for your cooperation. Thank you for taking the time. Thank you for your civility, every very thoughtful answers. And audience, you're going to get a chance. Don't go away yet, though, because Gary Higgins is going to come up for a few final comments. And audience, I don't think I've ever had an audience have so few interruptions. You really gave these candidates their best shot, and I know they and I appreciate it. And now, hang on for Gary in a minute, but let loose right now. That was awesome.
Thank you, Julie. Do we have a great group of candidates for what? Before you run out tonight, I want to make a couple of announcements. Before I get to them, again, I want to thank Julie Carey for the great job she did tonight. Very professional as always. And again, I want to thank Rich Anderson for being here and his leadership of the party that brought us great victories in November, and it's going to bring us victories this November as well. And I want to thank all of you standing room only in the House for coming out tonight and taking the time to view our candidates and see where they're coming from. Please continue this energy into the fall, because if you do, we will win again. Two announcements I want to make. One is we're having a straw poll, and I'd like to read a message to you about that. If everyone could please take a moment on your way out and scan the QR code on the tables in the back and participate in our straw poll, that would be greatly appreciated. For those of you that are maybe not familiar with that technology, there are staff back there to help you with that, and they would be ready to aid you in getting that QR code and being able to participate in the poll. It'll give us a great idea on how the candidates did tonight, what you thought about our candidates, and we want to have your input and know about your participation in this process. Last but not least, the Republican Party of Virginia has brought their advance to Northern Virginia, and if you're not familiar with that, the advance, it is coming up on April, where's the dates here? April 28th through 30th. And it's going to be at the Gulfs Hilton here in Northern Virginia. We would encourage you to either go to the RPB website or the 10th District website, take a look at the program. We'd love to have you there, and it's right in your backyard, so it'll be easy to do. So again, thank you all for being here. Thank you to our great group of candidates and for them being here, and let's carry this energy into November.
Yeah.